Hi everyone, John here from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey. And today I want to talk to you guys about some of the cracks that you guys might see as you look at houses that you're considering purchasing, or some of the cracks that we might see on your home inspection. And I think it's helpful to have just sort of like a basic understanding of some of this type of foundation cracking because foundations and cracking and foundation movement, and that's usually at the top of your guys' list of concerns. And of course, water is up there, water infiltration is up there, roofing condition, that's up there too. But cracking of the foundation, movement of the foundation, that's usually within the first 1 to 3 sort of defects that you guys are concerned with, and rightly so. These things are important. I mean, the foundation is actually what is holding the rest of your house up, right? So I just want to talk briefly about a couple of these type of cracks, and maybe you guys will find that useful. Hey, look, if you guys are sticking with me on this video, let's just get right down to it. And the first crack that I want to talk about is horizontal cracking. So they're obviously different than vertical. Horizontal crack is going to go along the length of a foundation wall. Now, usually we're going to find this type of cracking in a block foundation wall. Usually. Not to say that it can't be in other types of foundation walls, once in a while in a brick wall, but most of the time we're going to see this type of cracking in a block foundation wall. And it's certainly helpful for us as home inspectors if we can go down into a basement and have the foundation walls visible, right? So free from clutter and obstruction. And I know you guys really like finished basements, but having a finished basement really prevents us from seeing a lot of this. So finished basements are something that we just have to kind of work around. We obviously can't see behind the wall finishes, of course, and the ceilings. So it's just something that we have to work around. So we may not be able to locate this type of cracking. But horizontal cracking generally happens at the midsection of the wall or possibly at the ground level. And so horizontal cracking is generally, as a rule of thumb, right? Not always, but just as a general rule, you want to keep that in mind that this could be a structural concern. And in most cases, it is. When you see a horizontal crack, and they usually follow the mortar joints in the block wall. So why? Why do they just follow them? Well, because that's the weak portion of the wall. So typically when we see a horizontal mid-wall crack in a foundation, it's going to be at the mortar joint. And it might be wide, and it might actually be really, really thin and just, beginning. So what causes this type of cracking? Generally, the cause is typically hydrostatic pressure, which is water pressure essentially, pushing on the foundation wall of the home. And this force, this pushing on the foundation wall, it exerts pressure that is beyond the design capacity of the wall to withstand. And the same thing, can happen to exterior walls like block retaining walls, wood retaining walls. But here, let's focus on just the foundation because this can be, a high dollar item to either repair or replace. So this cracking can be caused by, generally speaking, water laying against the foundation walls over the years. And the water exerts a pressure, especially when it freezes. So you have water laying against the foundation, and it's pushing against that foundation over time, and especially in the winter when that water freezes, right? So when water freezes, it expands, and it's going to exert even more pressure on the foundation wall. And this generally causes this type of cracking. So as home inspectors, every single day, I'm harping on grading around houses and groundwater control, right? So if we have proper groundwater control, we're going to mitigate the chances of this type of cracking happening, right? So not only can groundwater cause water penetration problems, it can cause foundation wall cracking problems because of the pressures that exert on the foundation walls, causing them to fail. Also, when you have, take for example, clay soil around a home, which is a soil that really retains a lot of water. And you know, a lot of areas in New Jersey, we have a lot of clay soil. But clay is considered an expansive soil, especially when it gets wet, the soil expands. Especially when it freezes, the soil expands. And all along the way, it exerts these pressures on the foundation wall of the house. So it's an inward push of the foundation. So I want you guys, when you don't have a finished basement, is to take a look in the basement of the house you're thinking about buying and look for any horizontal cracking in the foundation wall. And that could be even really thin cracks that follow the mortar joints. Or they can be wide, say, you know, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, or even wider. So generally when we have cracking like that, with over the years, we'll see some type of displacement or bowing of the interior foundation walls too. So the wall is not going to stay straight when these forces are exerting on the wall, right? Over time, that wall is going to give and it's going to move inward. And that's, a lot of times we'll see that. So if we put a level up, if we put a laser level up, or if we eye down the foundation walls, and we certainly as home inspectors, we need to do this, of course. Sometimes we'll see that foundation wall out or generally bowing inward. And that's for sure a cause for concern. So not all hope is lost. I mean, you can certainly fix this type of problem, you know, repair this problem. Take, for example, using carbon fiber straps or a strapping system that a company that specializes in this type of repair will strap a carbon fiber strap roughly 8 feet down the course of the block wall from the top to the bottom of the wall. And these carbon fiber straps are super strong, and they create another offsetting pressure so that that wall doesn't really want to come in, or the cracking doesn't really want to continue to occur. There are other fixes. I like the carbon fiber straps. I think they work well. There's certainly other fixes as well. So if you see a crack like that in a home that you're thinking about buying, you know, the light bulb should come on and say, you know what, this is possibly a structural problem. Snap a couple of pictures, eye up the wall, see if that wall is bowing inward. Maybe send those photos to your home inspector that's going to perform your home inspector so they can sort of have their radar up for this problem. But not all hope is lost. I mean, it's certainly these things can be fixed. And that's why it's so crucial to make sure you're directing water as best you can. And those water controls around the house, those gutters and downspouts and overall grading are crucially important for keeping this water away from the foundation so you don't get water penetration and you don't get this foundation wall cracking and movement. The next crack I want to talk to you guys about, and we usually see this type of cracking at the corners of buildings, the corners of homes. So you'll see a diagonal crack at a corner of a house, and then there'll be another opposing crack at the same corner, like on the right side of the house. So we're talking about the right rear of a house. We'll see a diagonal crack at the right rear, right side. And then we'll also see at the back side, same corner, another diagonal crack. So this is also falls into the category of a structural concern. And these cracks, is when they're diagonal, jagged type of cracks, and you have two opposing type cracks, it's generally caused by differential movement. So these are differential movement cracks. And when we're talking about differential movement, we're talking about exactly kind of what that says. It's two areas of the home that are settling at a different rate. So you may have the back half of the home, say that we're talking about the right rear corner, and that's settling at a much faster rate than the balance of the foundation wall. And of course, if that happens, we're going to have cracking. And we see this a lot. We see this a lot where, take for example, there's a downspout right in that area. And, you know, for years, that downspout has just been dumping water right at that right rear back corner, and that downspout is just putting that water there. And that soil just at that right rear corner is getting soaked and saturated year after year. And that's a lot of times we'll have this type of thing where the footing can drop, the foundation can settle at a faster rate than the balance of the house, and we'll have that sort of cracking at the back of the house. We could also have this cracking at the front of the home. So when we have this differential movement, and sometimes we find these in foundation walls of garages in particular. I'll see this a lot on the not the house side of the garage, but the opposite side of an attached garage. This is something that I find quite often actually. And this is a structural concern. So if you guys see this type of movement, and usually these cracks are relatively wide, I mean, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, something like that. If you guys see this, then, again, the light bulb should come on and say, this is likely to be a structural issue that we're going to have to address. Obviously, your home inspector will be on site too, and they'll be able to sort of give you information on, regarding the severity, of the cracking of the foundation wall. But again, not all hope is lost. I mean, just because you have a crack in your foundation wall or you have differential movement, I mean, doesn't mean that can't be repaired. I mean, foundation wall repair is, probably, one of the most expensive types of repairs that you can, undertake in a home. But, you might have a chance to work with the seller on remediation, repair, sometimes replacement. You never know. I've seen a lot of things happen. I mean, you also have to consider that if we find one of these cracks on your home inspection, right, and the seller balks on it, doesn't want to sell you the house because you're asking for correction, I mean, the next home inspector is going to find the crack as well. The crack is still going to be there, and typically the seller is going to have to at least indicate that these cracks exist, or tell future buyers about this cracking, because they are, hey, let's face it, they fall into the category of material defects, right? Bigger type of problems. I mean, I don't want to go through that. In other videos I've explained what material defects are, but just know that that's the big stuff, man. That's the bigger things. These cracks can be fixed. So definitely keep your eyes open when you're looking. And these cracks, these differential movement cracks, generally can be seen from the outside of the house. And, sometimes they've been patched or repaired. I should say patched. Patching is just, putting epoxy. Patching is just, putting mortar, painting maybe over them. And this is sort of just to make the crack, not as severe. And a lot of times, we'll see this too. So we must also be on our toes and understand that people do patch cracks, and you have to be aware and keep looking for this type of thing. So that's the second type of crack, and we'll go through the next type right now. So the next crack that we're going to talk about is vertical cracking, or up and down cracking. And this cracking, we see this type of cracking almost every house that we inspect is going to have some type of vertical cracking in the foundation wall. And generally speaking, I'm just talking generalities here, not take this home to the bank kind of thing, but these cracks are generally more benign than, say, a horizontal crack or a differential movement crack. And a lot of times these cracks will simply be caused by settlement of the foundation, normal and expected settlement of the foundation, and they cause this cracking to occur. So when we have more normalized foundational settlement, all houses are going to move and materials are going to shrink and things are going to settle and soil is going to compact. And all of that happens, especially after a new build. So it's not uncommon to have some vertical cracking develop in the walls, foundation walls. Generally, this type of cracking can simply be patched, maybe by using an appropriate epoxy, right? You patch it, this will prevent water from entering, that crack. But this is another thing that home inspectors, we're going to obviously look for this type of vertical cracking. And we can see this typically by walking around the exterior of the home and doing our exterior home inspection. So, look for these type of cracks too. But, I want to be cautious as well. If you find a vertical crack, they're not all benign. They're not all not a problem. So if you have a wide vertical crack, like a 1/4 inch or more wide, and it's open and it's jagged, you're likely to have some type of settlement problem in that location of the foundation wall. So it really depends on the severity. You have to really look at these cracks and have, the experience behind you to look at a crack and understand, what's happening, why is this crack forming, and to have the know-how whether or not that you need to get that crack further evaluated. So as home inspectors here in New Jersey, we're not engineers. There's some home inspectors who are engineers, but the majority of us are not engineers. So when we have significant cracking in a home, we want to tell our customer, hey, you know what? You should get a professional engineer out here to take a look at this crack and to evaluate it and determine if it has to be fixed, if it's stable, and does it need correction. And then, possibly the engineer might be able to present you with a solution or fix for the problem. And then you would know exactly, at least roughly how much that, solution or repair would cost to do. And you might be able to possibly go back to the seller with that information. But a lot of times the seller doesn't even know that these cracks exist. They're living their lives, they're enjoying their family, and they're not doing home inspections, on homes they own. And so a lot of times, this will be a surprise, for them as well. But as home inspectors, we really need to be careful on this, further evaluate. And I've harped on this a long time ago and in a lot of videos. So we don't want to be sending our customer to a professional engineer if there's no need to do so. So if we see some general cracking on the outside of the home that is completely normal, we don't want to send our client to spend money on an engineer. Like we don't need to do that, right? We want to use that further evaluate and send them to an engineer only when it's truly necessary to do so. So, I find this necessary, I gotta be honest, not really that often, not often at all, frankly. You have to be able to identify what is a problem significantly and what is not in the house. So, if you're doing a home inspection and your home inspector does, call out a crack as something, more than expected or typical, welcome that they're doing that and they are looking out for your best interest. And it's really up to you now to take the ball and hire an engineer to come in to evaluate that crack further and to make sure that foundation is stable and is not going to get worse over time. Because the last thing you want to do is spend all this money on a house here in New Jersey and then you have to put literally tens of thousands of dollars possibly in the home to correct a foundation problem. I mean, spending money up front to have a professional engineer come in is certainly better than spending, finding out later on that you have a big problem, right? So I'd rather spend the money now than, later have it, 20 times fold, possible expenditures come in. So definitely make sure that you guys are looking at these cracks when you're buying homes, and make sure that, your home inspector is discussing these cracks as well, during your home inspection. There's an awful lot to know about cracking, and the more home inspections you do, the more you see, and the more, skilled you are at determining if something is a significant problem or not. It's like everything else. The more you do something, the better at it you get, and just generally speaking, the more information you're going to retain and be able to, present that, to your clients. So it's not a video, an all-encompassing video about cracking. I know there's so many different variables and so many different things, regarding cracking. So the purpose of this video is just really to give you guys just a brief beginning. And so you guys, when you're looking at homes, and they're super expensive here in New Jersey, and it's a very, very competitive market. So when you're looking at houses, maybe, the video kind of jogs your mind and say, and you tell look at that crack right there. That crack is probably caused by differential movement. Or you go down into a basement and you see a long horizontal crack, and that's roughly about, the level of the soil, and you tell your wife, boy, that crack may be an issue. That's the purpose of these videos. It's not to make you guys, professional home inspectors or professional engineers. It's just you give you guys some grounding and some just ability to maybe make some good decisions for yourself, and your family. So when you're looking at these houses in New Jersey and you don't have a finished basement, make sure you open your eyes and look for that cracking. Don't be afraid to poke around and go into the basement. Check out these houses. I mean, you're spending an awful lot of money, and it's unfortunate that you don't really get to spend a lot of time in the houses that you're buying, but that's just how it is today. I don't like it. I don't particularly like, the real estate environment that we're in. I think we're doing a lot of there's a lot of disservice done to a lot of people buying homes. And hopefully the tide will change eventually. I don't think it'll be soon, but maybe a couple years, things will start to really loosen up, and we'll have more of an equilibrium in the real estate market, where the buyer is not such at a disadvantage. But anyway, that's not really what the purpose of this video is. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. If one or two of you watch, I appreciate it. I first started doing this, I didn't expect anybody to watch at all. Just really doing it for fun. But if you get something from it, great. I'm so happy. If you have any questions about home inspections, reach out. My name is John, and I'm from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.